Right now, inside Arsenal's boardroom, there is a conversation happening that could reshape the entire left side of this football club. A move for Vinicius Jr is not a fantasy anymore. It is being actively explored. There is no bid on the table yet, but the door has been pushed open, and it has been pushed open from both sides. Vinicius Jr has 1 year left on his contract at Real Madrid. 1 year. In football, that number changes everything. It changes leverage. It changes urgency. It changes what a selling club is willing to accept before that value disappears completely. Arsenal know this. That is exactly why they are positioning themselves to be opportunistic, not desperate. Opportunistic. And here is the part that should make every Arsenal supporter sit up straight. Vinicius Jr himself has paused contract renewal talks with Real Madrid. Not Arsenal. Not outside noise. The player himself stepped back from the table, and that pause followed a fallout with Xabi Alonso. When a generational talent stops negotiating with his own club, that is not a small detail. That is a signal. So the stakes here are real. If Arsenal move too slowly, another club steps in. If they move too fast without genuine encouragement from the player's side, they risk wasting time and resources on a deal that was never truly live. This is the tightrope Arsenal are walking right now. Let me be clear about what is actually at risk here. This is not just about adding one more attacking player to a squad that already has quality. This is about whether Arsenal can turn a period of contract uncertainty at Real Madrid into the single biggest signing in the club's modern history. If they hesitate, if they fail to open direct talks when the player's side gives them a green light, this opportunity closes. And it closes fast, because Liverpool have also been made aware of Vinicius Jr.'s availability, and Saudi interest from Al Ahly is real, with a contract worth €1 billion over 5 years reportedly proposed to him last year. That is the scale of competition Arsenal are up against. Before I go further into how this story is developing, if you want deeper analysis on stories like this, ones that actually separate confirmed fact from noise, hit that subscribe button. This channel is built on precision, not speculation, and I want you here for every step of this transfer window. Let's go through this properly, piece by piece, because there is a lot of information circulating right now, and not all of it carries the same weight. Some of what I am about to walk you through is confirmed. Some of it is strictly rumour. I am going to tell you which is which as we go, because that distinction matters more than anything else in a transfer window like this one. The Vinicius Jr situation is real, but it is still exploratory. Arsenal are exploring a deal for Vinicius Jr. That is the accurate way to describe where things stand. It is viewed internally as a viable option, but there is no bid yet. Arsenal are prepared to be opportunistic, given that Vinicius Jr currently has just 1 year remaining on his contract at Real Madrid. There is some caution attached to this, because of all the moving parts happening at Real Madrid right now, but Arsenal are prepared to open direct talks if they receive encouragement from the players' representatives. Here is the key detail that explains why this rumour has legs. Vinicius Jr has not signed a new contract at Real Madrid. Renewal talks have taken place on and off for over a year. At times, an extension looked close, but Vinicius Jr himself paused those negotiations following a fallout with Xabi Alonso, and no agreement has been reached since that pause began. Real Madrid sources have indicated that if no progress is made on a new deal, a sale this summer is not something to be ruled out. Now, this is where it gets even more interesting. Vinicius Jr.'s representation, Rock Nation, who also look after Yan Diomande, reportedly suggested their client to Liverpool as well. However, Liverpool showed no real engagement or meaningful discussion around that suggestion, because their priority this window is strengthening the right wing, not the left. That tells you something important. Liverpool had a genuine opening here and chose not to walk through it. Arsenal, by contrast, are treating this as viable. There is also serious interest from Saudi Arabia. Central figures at Al Ahly reportedly dream of signing Vinicius Jr, and should he become available, they are thought to be positioned to move. A 5-year contract worth €1 billion was proposed to him last year. That number alone tells you the financial gravity surrounding this player. Arsenal are not just competing with Premier League rivals here. They are competing with state-backed wealth that can outspend almost anyone in world football. So what does this mean for Arsenal supporters watching this unfold? It means the interest is genuine, the circumstances at Real Madrid are genuinely unstable, but the deal is not close. No bid has been made. This remains for now a rumour with real substance behind it, not a confirmed transfer. Martin Odegaard already told you how he feels about Vinicius Jr, and it matters. Back in 2025, Martin Odegaard was asked directly, best player in the world. His answer was Vinicius Jr. Asked which player he would sign for Arsenal from Real Madrid, his answer, again, was Vinicius Jr. I want you to sit with that for a second. This is not outside noise. This is not a pundit or a journalist speculating from a distance. This is Arsenal's own captain, a player who trains with this squad every single day, publicly naming Vinicius Jr as the one Real Madrid player he would want at Arsenal. When your own dressing room leader is already on record wanting a signing before the deal even develops, that adds a layer of internal alignment that most transfer rumours simply do not have. It suggests that if this move does happen, it will not be a forced fit. It will be a signing the current squad has already, in some sense, endorsed. Vinicius Jr respects what Odegaard brings to a football pitch, and that respect goes both ways. There is a direct quote from Vinicius Jr himself, discussing Odegaard after Brazil faced Norway at the World Cup. His words were about how well Norway moved as a team, how Odegaard controlled that game, and how Brazil could not figure out the timing to press and win the ball back. This might sound like a small detail, but in football, mutual respect between elite players is not nothing. It tells you that if Vinicius Jr did arrive at Arsenal, he would not be walking into a dressing room where he has to earn the respect of the player he would be lining up alongside in midfield combinations. That respect already exists, and it was earned on the biggest stage in the sport, a World Cup match, not in a friendly or a training ground exchange. Jose Mourinho, now back in charge at Real Madrid, does not want Vinicius Jr to leave. This is a critical piece of context, and it directly affects how realistic this transfer actually is. Jose Mourinho, who has returned as Real Madrid's manager, would oppose Arsenal signing Vinicius Jr. He has told the club's hierarchy that he wants all of his core players to stay, and he is adamant that Vinicius Jr, Kylian Mbappe, and Jude Bellingham remain part of his squad. This is confirmed information about Mourinho's stance, and it is significant. It means that even though Real Madrid sources have said a sale is not to be discounted if renewal talks continue to stall, the club's own manager is pushing in the opposite direction. He wants Vinicius Jr to stay. That creates internal tension at Real Madrid between the football side, represented by Mourinho, and whatever ownership or sporting decisions are being weighed at boardroom level. For Arsenal, this matters because it means any deal for Vinicius Jr would likely have to happen against the wishes of the manager currently coaching him. That is not an impossible situation in football. Players have left clubs despite a manager wanting them to stay, but it does add resistance to a move that already required the player's own frustration with the club to even become plausible in the first place. If Vinicius Jr signs, the financial commitment is significant. Vinicius Jr is understood to currently earn around £400,000 per week. That is the reported figure attached to him, and here is something worth paying close attention to. Should he sign for Arsenal, that wage level would reportedly change the conversation around a contract renewal for Declan Rice. Think about what that actually means in practical terms. Arsenal already have one of their most important midfielders, Declan Rice, whose own contract situation would need to be renegotiated in a world where a new signing is earning close to £400,000 per week. Wage structures inside a football club are not isolated. One major signing at that financial level inevitably puts pressure on what the club is prepared to offer its existing top performers. This is not a minor footnote. This is a structural consequence that Arsenal's hierarchy would need to plan for carefully if this deal ever moves from exploration to execution. If Vinicius Jr arrives, Bukayo Saka is positioned to benefit the most. Here is where the tactical picture becomes genuinely fascinating. For years now, opposing managers in the Premier League and in Europe have used a specific strategy against Arsenal. They send two players to deal with Saka. In doing so, they sacrifice numbers on the opposite flank, betting that the rest of the team can shift across as a unit to cover that gap. If Vinicius Jr signs and takes up residence on the left, that strategy stops working. Opposing coaches would no longer be able to afford leaving the other flank exposed while doubling up on Saka, because now they would have two elite wide threats to account for, not one. This would very likely free Saka to face more one-on-one situations, the exact matchups where his individual quality tends to do the most damage. And it is not only Saka who stands to gain. Even if Saka is not the direct beneficiary in a given match, someone else in the team would find more space, because defences simply cannot commit resources to shutting down two world-class wide players and still maintain balance everywhere else on the pitch. Players like Odegaard and Rice are exactly the kind of players capable of exploiting spaces that open up elsewhere on the field when defensive attention is split. This is the tactical logic behind why this move, if completed, would not just be an isolated upgrade. It would change how the entire team is defended against. Vinicius Jr.'s history against English opposition removes any doubt about adaptation. One of the recurring questions with elite foreign signings is always the same. Will they cope with the physicality and intensity of English football? With Vinicius Jr., the data answers that question clearly. 10 goals and 12 assists in 26 games against English clubs. That is a goal contribution nearly every single game against some of the best teams in Europe. If he can produce numbers like that against the strongest English sides he has faced, there is no reasonable basis to expect he would struggle against teams outside the traditional top six. Now let's shift to the second major story developing simultaneously. Julian Alvarez. Arsenal have stepped up their pursuit, and the numbers being discussed are substantial. Reports indicate Arsenal have intensified their interest in Julian Alvarez and are prepared to offer Atletico Madrid £85 million, plus Victor Gyökeres, who was previously a target for Atletico Madrid themselves. That last detail is worth noting carefully. Atletico Madrid already wanted Gyökeres before this Alvarez conversation even began, which is part of why a swap structure involving him has gathered momentum in the first place. Not everyone at Arsenal agrees this is the right structure. Piers Morgan has publicly pushed back on the idea of selling Gyökeres to fund a move for Alvarez, calling it madness. His reasoning is built entirely on what Gyökeres has already delivered. He helped win the league in his very first season, scored 21 goals across all competitions, with 14 of those in the Premier League specifically, and has shown a tremendous work rate and attitude throughout. His position is straightforward. Arsenal should absolutely try to sign Alvarez, but keeping Gyökeres in the process. This disagreement matters because it reflects a genuine tension in how this deal could be structured. Selling your top scorer from a title-winning season, even to land another elite forward, is not a decision without real cost. Alvarez is genuinely wanted, and Arsenal are prepared to move fast and spend big. Sources indicate Arsenal have positioned themselves to act immediately should Julian Alvarez indicate he wants to join the club, with sporting director Andrea Berta maintaining regular contact with the players' representatives. Arsenal are reportedly prepared to break the current British transfer record if that is what it takes to sign him. However, internally, there is a belief that any actual deal with Atletico Madrid would likely be completed well below that record-breaking level. Here is a detail that changes how significant this entire pursuit really is. Arsenal's financial planning for Alvarez sits entirely separate from the rest of their summer transfer budget. That means a move for Alvarez would not prevent them from also pursuing another major attacking signing. In other words, Alvarez and Vinicius Jr are not necessarily competing for the same pool of money. Arsenal appear to be planning for both possibilities simultaneously, which tells you how ambitious this window is shaping up to be. An alternative to a Gyökeres swap has been proposed, involving two different players. Rather than including Gyökeres in any Alvarez deal, an alternative structure has been suggested. Cadena Ser have reported that if Alvarez completely refuses to stay at Atletico Madrid, Diego Simeone's side would consider accepting Gabriel Martinelli and Gabriel Jesus as part of the exchange instead of Gyökeres. The reasoning here centres on roles that have become less certain at Arsenal. Gabriel Jesus is understood to have no long-term future at the club, while Martinelli's role would likely shrink further if Arsenal do sign a high-profile left-winger, which, given everything discussed about Vinicius Jr, is clearly on the table. Using these two players instead of Gyökeres would reduce the overall transfer fee required and help Arsenal save significantly on wages, since two squad players moving on eases the financial load in a way that keeping Gyökeres and only adding cash would not. Both Martinelli and Jesus are seen as having the qualities to succeed under Simeone's system at Atletico Madrid and could genuinely thrive in that environment. This is a rumoured alternative, not a confirmed structure, but it reflects an internal debate about who Arsenal should be willing to part with to land one of the most sought-after forwards in Europe. Now let's move to the broader squad picture because there is real news here alongside all this speculation. Arsenal and Hamburger SV are in direct talks over Fabio Vieira, and this is a confirmed negotiation, not speculation. The two clubs have exchanged concrete figures over a permanent transfer for Fabio Vieira, with the player himself pushing for the move after enjoying his time at the club, the city, and working under the coach there. All parties are actively working toward a deal, and this is happening despite Vieira currently being part of Arsenal's pre-season training camp. This tells you the departure is essentially a matter of finalising terms, not a question of whether it happens at all. Riccardo Calafiori has made his feelings about Arsenal unmistakably clear. In his own words, he came to London to watch Arsenal, and he never really left. That is not a marketing quote. That is a player publicly stating his emotional connection to this football club. When you combine that sentiment with his performances since arriving, it paints a picture of a defender who sees his future at Arsenal as something far deeper than a simple job. That kind of genuine affiliation tends to translate into consistency and commitment on the pitch, and it is worth Arsenal supporters recognising that not every player who wears the shirt does so purely as a career step. Pre-season has officially resumed, and the squad list tells its own story. Arsenal have resumed pre-season training at London Colney, with 13 senior players involved alongside academy prospects Marley Salmon and Max Dowman. The goalkeepers involved are Tommy Setford, Ilan Meslier and Kepa Arrizabalaga. The defenders are Ben White, Christian Mosquera, Riccardo Calafiori, Jurriën Timber and Marley Salmon. The midfielders are Fabio Vieira, Ethan Nwaneri, Miles Lewis-Skelly, Christian Norgard and Max Dowman. The forwards are Rice Nelson and Gabriel Jesus. This group is expected to feature prominently in Arsenal's opening friendlies, while several World Cup participants remain on extended leave, which is standard for a club whose players competed deep into that tournament. Julian Timber continues his rehabilitation and is unlikely to feature early in pre-season, and new signing Christos Tsolis has already joined the squad. What stands out here is the presence of Fabio Vieira in this training group, even as talks with Hamburger SV continue over his permanent departure. This is common in football. Players train with their current club right up until a transfer is finalised, but it is worth flagging so there is no confusion about his actual status. He is training with Arsenal right now, while simultaneously being close to a permanent move away. I also want to point out Gabriel Jesus' inclusion in this list. Given what has been reported about his role potentially being used as makeweight in a Julian Alvarez negotiation, seeing him back involved in pre-season training does not confirm or deny that rumour. It simply reflects standard squad procedure while his future remains unresolved. There is a broader sentiment forming among Arsenal's fan base and pundits about what these moves represent. There is a growing framing circulating around Arsenal's transfer activity that captures the scale of ambition being discussed. It contrasts the type of signing a club makes when finishing 4th or 10th in another club's case, with the type of signing available to a club that has just won the league. Vinicius Jr represents the latter category. Arsenal are being described as having gone to a different level entirely, with credit being given directly to Mikel Arteta for that shift. This sentiment is not a confirmed transfer detail, it is a reflection of how the mood around the club has changed. Winning the Premier League fundamentally altered what Arsenal are able to pursue in the transfer market, and the fact that names like Vinicius Jr and Julian Alvarez are being discussed with any degree of seriousness is itself evidence of that shift. Let me now pull all of this together because the full picture matters more than any single headline. Arsenal are running two major separate lines of pursuit this summer. The first is Vinicius Jr, a move that remains unconfirmed and without a bid, but grounded in real substance because of his contract situation at Real Madrid, his own paused negotiations following the Xabi Alonso fallout, and genuine interest from Liverpool, who ultimately passed, and Saudi Arabia's Al Ahly, who remain a serious financial threat. Standing in the way of this move is Jose Mourinho himself, who wants Vinicius Jr to stay as part of his core group alongside Mbappe and Bellingham. If this deal happens, it would likely happen despite the manager's wishes, not because of them. The second major pursuit is Julian Alvarez, where Arsenal have shown genuine intent, with Andrea Berta maintaining direct contact with his representatives and a willingness to break the British transfer record if necessary, though a below-record deal is considered more likely internally. The structure of that deal remains contested, with one reported plan involving Victor Gyökeres plus £85 million, criticised publicly by Piers Morgan, and an alternative plan involving Gabriel Martinelli and Gabriel Jesus instead, which would preserve Gyökeres while still reducing the transfer fee and easing the wage bill. Layered underneath both of these headline pursuits is the tactical reality that a Vinicius Jr signing specifically would transform how Saka is defended against, potentially unlocking more one-on-one opportunities for him and more space for players like Odegaard and Rice. And layered underneath that is the practical reality that a signing at Vinicius Jr.'s wage level would directly affect the terms of any future Declan Rice renewal. Meanwhile, away from the headline pursuits, Arsenal are managing genuine, confirmed business. Fabio Vieira is close to a permanent exit to Hamburger SV. Riccardo Calafiori has reaffirmed his emotional connection to the club. Pre-season training has resumed with a clearly defined group of 13 senior players and 2 academy prospects, while the club's World Cup contingent remains on extended rest. This is a club operating on multiple fronts simultaneously, balancing ambition at the very top end of the market with the routine, necessary management of a modern football squad. The Vinicius Jr and Julian Alvarez stories will likely dominate the conversation in the coming weeks, but do not lose sight of the fact that neither is confirmed. Both remain at this stage rumours with real substance, not finished deals. There is one more thing worth sitting with before I close this out, and it is about timing. Every single element of this story is happening at once, in the same window, under the same pressure. Vinicius Jr.'s contract clock is ticking down to 1 year remaining. Alvarez's camp is in regular contact with Berta, while Atletico Madrid weigh up whether to hold firm or accept a structured departure. Vieira's move to Hamburger SV is being finalised while he trains alongside teammates who may not be his teammates for much longer. Calafiori is publicly affirming his commitment while names like Martinelli and Jesus are floated as makeweights in a completely different negotiation. None of these stories exist in isolation. They are all connected by the same underlying force, a club that has just won the league and is now negotiating from a position of strength it has not had in years. That strength changes behaviour. It changes who picks up the phone when Arsenal call. It changes whether a player like Vinicius Jr, sitting in Madrid with a stalled contract and a manager who wants him to stay, even entertains a conversation about leaving. Clubs coming off relegation battles or mid-table finishes do not have this kind of gravity in the market. Champions do. And that is precisely the shift being described when people talk about Arsenal having moved to a different level entirely under Mikel Arteta. So here is what I want you to take away from everything we have covered today. Treat the Vinicius Jr. interest as real but unresolved, complicated by Mourinho's opposition and Real Madrid's uncertainty over his contract. Treat the Alvarez pursuit as serious and well-funded, but still unsettled in terms of exactly which players would move the other way. And treat the confirmed business, Vieira's exit, Calafiori's commitment, the structure of this pre-season squad, as the stable foundation underneath all of the noise happening above it. I will be tracking every single update on both of these stories as they develop, and I will bring you the next update the moment there is genuine movement, not manufactured hype. If you found this breakdown useful, make sure you are subscribed, because this is exactly the kind of precise, fact-based analysis this channel is built around. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.